Hello, guys. I am back. How are you today? I hope you're having a wonderful day, morning, night, evening, whenever you're watching this, as always. So, today we're going to be reviewing a movie called Videodrome. Any of y'all heard of it? From what I know, it's kind of like a cult classic film, very much horror, sci fi, is from '83, so it's a bit of an oldie. A little bit different than the other movies I've been reviewing so far. I actually went to go see this the other day with one of my friends. We went to this really cool. It's this theater in Atlanta that's like this old. It's pretty like an old historic theater, but they've kind of like refurbished it and kind of like updated it and stuff. So it's really cool on the inside, but it still has that like vintage feel. It's like a really old looking theater. It's super cool. Yeah, they play a lot of like artsy films and stuff like that, and like old films, like kind of like cult classic films. They play a lot of different films there, new and old. But we went to go see this movie. Neither of us had ever seen it before, but she told me it was kind of like a cult classic film. Like a lot of people really like it for the cinematography, and both of us are very much into like kind of artsy film and stuff like that. So I was really excited to go see it. It was very interesting, to say the least. It was directed and written by David Cronenberg, he was like very well known for his kind of like unique artistic style in his films. Very gory, very gross, very like very creepy. A lot of his stuff was very kind of like explicit. Just very interesting kind of like horror based movies. You know what I mean? Also, I'm sorry, my microphone is like driving me crazy that it's like sticking out like that. With what I'm wearing, there's nowhere to put it. Okay, so I apologize that it's like all up in my face, but she's gonna have to be there. But basically, both of us went into this movie not really knowing anything about it besides a brief synopsis. And when I tell you, I was basically like, WTF did I just watch? It was very strange. It was funny because, like I said, both of us like a lot of like, like artsy movies, like kind of like abstract, like films. Like both of us are really into stuff like that. So she suggested that we go see it, and I was thinking like, girl, what the hell did you just bring me to watch? Like, what are we watching right now? The cool thing about this movie is the meaning behind it and like the cinematography and everything. The more that I researched it and like David Cronenberg's style and like what he's known for and all that, it was actually really interesting, and I kind of had like a new appreciation for this movie, so I really wanted to talk about it. And I just wanted to do something kind of different than like the more recent films that I've been doing. I kind of want to do a little bit everything on this channel. I just appreciate film from all time periods and all genres, so like I wanted to kind of mix it up, do something a little bit different. I kind of did like an '80s inspired fit today. And then I have these earrings. I'm still deciding which ones I want to wear, but I feel like they're both kind of like an '80s vibe. As y'all know, I really like to go with like the aesthetic of a movie or the time period or kind of just like something style wise, like inspired by the movie that I'm reviewing. So today I'm doing kind of like an '80s look, and I really went with like a lot of colors that were kind of prevalent like in the film. There was a lot of like red and black and like royal blue and colors like that. So I'm kind of doing a look, makeup look, and outfit like inspired by that, inspired by the time period. Like I said, this movie is from '83, so I'm gonna try to do a kind of like '80s inspired look. So yeah, let's get into it, you guys. So this review is gonna be a little bit different, mainly because this movie is there is a plot, but it's a little hard to follow. It's a lot less based off a plot and a lot more based on the kind of subtle meaning behind it, and the cinematography. Like the visuals are a really big part of this movie. So I, unlike the other movies and reviews that I've done, I don't really want to like go through and just summarize the entire thing. I kind of more just want to like leave this up to y'all to go watch it. I really encourage y'all to go watch this movie because the visuals are really cool. So I feel like I don't want to spoil too much. I want y'all to go and like see it and like develop your own interpretation. Just I don't the visuals are just really cool and really unique in a lot of Cronenberg's films. So like I feel like y'all should definitely go watch this one. And I don't know, yeah, I just don't want to spoil a whole lot. I'll give like a brief summary, a brief synopsis, just so that y'all know what it's about, and kind of just talk about what I liked from it, my takeaways, what I made of it, and my reaction to watching it and everything. So I'm gonna kind of focus on that a little bit more. One, to make it shorter because y'all know that my reviews end up long, so I want to be able to like edit this and pump it out a little bit faster than the other ones that I've done because they've taken me forever to edit, and I want to upload more consistently. So I'm gonna try to make this a little shorter. And like I said, I also just want y'all to go and watch this movie and kind of like develop your own interpretation. I don't want to spoil it too much because the visuals are such a big part of this movie. I don't even want to show too much of it. I just want y'all to go and watch it, okay? So this is going to be a little bit different, but I hope y'all still enjoy it. Hey y'all, future editing Jordan here. I totally forgot to mention this. I did want to include some pictures from this movie, like screen grabs or something, but a lot of them are very gory, and obviously it's fake, but I do feel like YouTube is probably not going to like that if I try to put that in there. So I'm just gonna keep that out. So just to let you know, if you're wondering why there's like no visuals in this review. That is the main reason. So I put in what I could, but everything that was like very gory, I don't think YouTube is gonna love that. So I'm gonna keep that out. So just wanted to make a little note there. So yeah, before we get into this, I also want to say this movie is pretty dark. Some of the meanings behind it are kind of dark. So I first want to say, if you are somebody that has a weak stomach and you cannot handle gore or like body horror and like gross out scenes, you're probably not going to want to watch this movie. There are some scenes in it that are like very gross, very nasty. You probably don't want to watch it while you're eating. Might not want to watch it on like a little movie date night. Probably not the time. It is a good movie. It is very interesting, but it's definitely very kind of like gross and gory in some scenes. So if you get like easily grossed out by stuff like that or get nauseous, you might not want to watch this movie. Just wanted to give a fair warning. And now it's kind of, to us now, it's probably going to look kind of corny because it is from the early 80s. So obviously the effects and everything. Honestly, the effects in this movie are pretty good. Like the practical effects, I will talk about this a little bit later, like as we get on into the review. But I mean, it is kind of like corny looking just because our special effects and like movie editing has just become so advanced since then. But some of the scenes actually are really like gross and just gory and kind of nasty. So if you're not into that sort of thing, if that sort of thing makes your stomach upset, don't watch this movie. Okay. But if not, I would definitely recommend watching it because it's just very interesting. It's a very interesting movie. So let me not make my intro super long this time and let me just get into this movie. All right, guys, let's go. I'm gonna start this makeup look. Okay, so before we start, I'm just gonna pull my hair out of the way with my little headband. I got this cute little cat ear headband. I thought it would be so fun for like the season. I actually got it for a costume for a friend's party, but 'tis the spooky season. Also, that's one of the reasons I decided to do this film too, because I feel like it's like a perfect time for like a bit of a creepy film. I haven't really done like a horror movie review or anything like that yet, so I feel like it's a perfect time of year. So let's go, let's do it. Let's hope I get this uploaded before Halloween instead of slacking like I did last time and taking forever. Okay. All right, so let's start and let me find my primer. Okay, so our main character in this movie is a dude named Max Wren. So he is kind of like a sleazy TV channel operator guy. So he basically runs this channel called Channel 83 on TV that broadcasts a lot of very YouTube is probably going to censor this video, so I have to be careful how I say this because there's a lot of vulgar subjects in this movie, and the good thing is my videos are not monetized, so I can kind of say whatever I want without being worried about that. But at the same time, I don't want it to be like hidden, I guess, or anything like that. So I'm going to try to kind of skate around some of the terms. It's a channel that kind of basically broadcasts all the type of content that is kind of like taboo, frowned upon, very violent things, things like corn, adult entertainment, things like that. So basically his whole idea with this channel is to kind of broadcast things that people can't see anywhere else, like things that are very extreme, kind of depraved, like things that are not shown on just regular television, right? So that's kind of his whole thing with the channel. So he basically comes across this kind of like broadcast station that is broadcasting all these kind of like snuff film type of videos. His assistant guy, like he's kind of like his partner, his name's Harlan. I think he's kind of like the technical guy for the channel, if I'm correct. He comes across this station where they're showing all these kind of like snuff films. So, well, I mean, they think that it's actors, and they're kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so realistic, but it looks very extreme. It's kind of like extreme adult content, and, you know, basically people being, how do I say this without YouTube getting mad at me? And so, yeah. I don't know if they would get mad at me for saying that or not. I have seen some channels before where even saying that word or either of those words can get the video like hidden or kind of like suppressed. So I'm just going to try to be careful because I know YouTube likes to take things down and I don't want that. Although I have seen other people like review this movie, so I think I'll be fine. But just in case, we're going to censor it, okay? I'll put text so that you know what I'm saying at least. So yeah, it's content like that, and they come across that, and he's kind of like, oh my gosh, wow, like this would be perfect for our channel. Like, we got to start broadcasting this stuff. So he starts broadcasting stuff like that and kind of getting into the more like dark side of TV and other like content like that. He's like, you know, we want to broadcast all the darkest stuff that we can find, like things that people have never seen before. So that channel, it's a channel that's broadcasting from Malaysia, and it's called Videodrome. So that's where the film gets the name from. So that is what the broadcast is called. So yeah, they're like, wow, great stuff. Let's put this on our channel. Yeah. Anyway, so then we see Max. He goes on to this talk show with this other woman who she's actually played by the lead singer of Blondie. I had no idea this whole time during that film. I was like, why does she look so familiar? Like, I don't know. I barely know any 80s actresses by name. Like, I don't know where I've seen her before. And then at the end of it, I like looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, that's where I know her from. She's the singer of Blondie. Like, what the heck? So it's crazy. I didn't even know she was in that movie. So her character, Nikki Brand, she runs a kind of like self-help like radio show. So she's kind of like a radio show host, and people kind of call in with their problems. She helps them, that kind of thing. So you see her and Max on this talk show with a talk show host, and she's basically kind of grilling him on like, why do you have this channel? Like, why is this something you want to broadcast? Like, why is this something you think it's okay for people to watch? Like, basically kind of being like, don't you think that's kind of harmful? So he kind of explains his reasoning. He's like, well, I feel like I'm kind of doing a good thing because I'm basically giving an outlet to all of these people who have these types of urges to do these types of things and watch this type of content, and giving them something to watch instead of them, you know, going out and doing this to somebody. And she's kind of like, a little bit of a weird thing to say, Max, but okay. So basically they're kind of asking them both questions, and she's asking Nikki like what she thinks about it, and basically in the middle of her answering, this man Max starts like flirting with her, and he's like, hey, like, can I take you out to dinner sometime? Like, you know, trying to flirt with her and stuff. And they do eventually kind of end up like hitting it off, and they start, you know, kind of hanging out and hooking up and whatnot. So, you know, they go out to dinner. He takes her back to his place, and they start, you know, oh my gosh, YouTube is gonna hate me, dude. How am I supposed to describe a David Cronenberg movie like without being censored on YouTube? This is very difficult. So basically, you know, they get talking after their little dinner date, and she comes across all the videos that he has like from his channel kind of like in his room, and she's looking at them and she's like, ooh, Videodrome, like, what is this? And he's like, oh, you probably don't want to watch that. It's like, it's a little, you know, it's a little much. And she's like, oh, well, it can't be that bad, you know. And she starts watching it, and because she thinks that it's like adult entertainment, so she's like, ooh, like, let me watch this, like, let's watch this together, you know. And then he's like, yeah, it's not that kind of adult entertainment, you know. But then she starts watching it, and she's like, I'm actually kind of like into this sort of thing. And he's kind of like, oh, okay. So we basically find out that she is like very into some very extreme things in that type of way, but not just, you know, the regular like type of thing. It's more kind of like she likes genuine like pain and like so she's like very sadomasochistic. So we find out this about her like pretty early on. You know, they start messing around, and there's this really like weird scene where he's literally like piercing her ears with a needle while they're doing the do, and she's like getting aroused by it. It's like very interesting. Okay, so we kind of find that out about her, that she's like very into some extreme stuff. She likes, you know, blood play and that type of thing. So it's very interesting. So yeah, that's like one of their first encounters with each other. So we're jumping right into the depravity in this movie. Okay, like I realized I was gonna do like the laminated brow look today, and I already did my foundation, so that's gonna be difficult. Okay, I'm gonna stop my foundation for a second, and then we're gonna finish it. You guys, I'm like all over the place today. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Forgive that my face is gonna look really like unblended for a second. So the broadcast Videodrome actually comes out of Pittsburgh, and Nikki is like aware of this. So she's like, I'm gonna go and audition for the show, because mind you, at this point they still think that it's just like actors basically acting out these things and not people actually getting hurt. So she's like, I'm gonna go audition for that. She's like, I was made for that show. I'm like, okay, girl, like, you know, I don't like to judge, but that seems a little dangerous. And even Max, like, as messed up as he is, like, he's just like, do not go do that. Like, do not go to that place. Like, don't audition for that show. So he's kind of like worried for her. He's like, do not go do that, okay? So if this man is telling you not to go, like, I feel like you should be like, okay, maybe not. But she's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go audition. Like, screw you. I'm gonna go do it anyway. So basically after that, Max like never sees her again. So at this point, Max wants to investigate Videodrome and like kind of try to figure out more information about it. So he meets up with this one woman who, I totally forgot to mention this in the beginning too, But in the beginning, you see him meeting with this guy. He meets with all these different clients who have like different, productions that he could possibly air on his show. So he meets with this one guy who's like kind of like I said, adult entertainment filmographer type of guy. And he basically turns him down because he's like, this is too softcore for me. Like, this is, we need something more extreme, because like that's the kind of stuff he wants to put on his channel, right? So later on, he ends up meeting with this woman who kind of same type of thing. She brings in some like adult entertainment film, and he's like, this is not extreme enough, not into this. But he still like keeps in contact with her because he's, she's like a client of his, and her name is Masha. So he meets with her, and basically she knows a little bit about Videodrome, and he's kind of talking to her about it, and like is kind of like, where can I find more information about this? Like, can you help me? Like, I want to find whoever's making this. And she's like, you don't want to mess with that. Like, she was like, I know that you think that this is like acting and these people are just acting, but like this is real. Like, they're actually and killing people. Like, it's snuff film. So she basically tells him that. But he's still like, he's like, no, I that can't be true. Like he's like really trying to get information from her about like where he can find the people that are making this, because he really wants to get in contact with them. He's really trying to get the information for her, and she's like, you don't want to be messing with this stuff. So eventually she does give him a name, which is Brian Oblivion. So he's kind of like a media theorist type of guy. We learn a little bit more about him later, but that's the name that she gives him. So he basically goes and tries to find him. Okay, you guys, sorry about that. I was like, every single time that I do like the, slick down brow look, it just messes up my foundation if I do it underneath and before I do that. So I was like halfway through doing it, and then I was like, wait a minute, because in the 80s, like the bushy brows, like early 80s, I was doing my research. Okay, I get particular about these makeup looks, okay? Like, I really wanted to do something accurate for the time period, so I was like researching early 80s makeup looks and stuff, and like the full coverage foundation and the bushy brows were like a really big thing, so I wanted to do something with that, and I totally forgot I was going to do my brows like that. Okay, so basically Max goes to find this guy, and he ends up tracking him down at this like homeless shelter. So it's a homeless shelter run by Brian Oblivion and his daughter. So basically it's like all these homeless people are just kind of like almost replacing their everyday life with TV. Like, they're all just kind of sitting and watching these like marathons of like TV viewing. So he's in there, and then he's kind of like walking around. He's basically trying to find the Brian guy, trying to talk to him. So eventually he finds his daughter. So basically he's trying to like get her to let him talk to her father. So basically Max then comes across this tape of Brian Oblivion explaining how Videodrome is part of this like mind control political movement in the United States. So we find out a little bit more information about this later too. My eyebrows are not staying where they need to go. It's driving me crazy. So then Max also starts having like these weird hallucinations. So he's basically hallucinating that Nikki from earlier is like inside his TV, and she's all like, come to Nikki, come to Nikki. Like, it's like this really weird hallucination. His TV starts like pulsating, and like it has like veins in it and stuff. This is a really cool scene actually though. Like, the special effects in it are super cool. Basically, imagine your TV becoming like anthropomorphized. Is that the word for it? Like, I think that's what it is. Like, when something has like a human like a quality to it, but it's like not human. Like, isn't that the term, like anthropomorphized? I don't know. I can barely pronounce that. But you know what I mean. It has like veins in it, and it has like it looks like it's alive, which is like really creepy and disturbing. But like, honestly, it was really cool from like a filmmaker standpoint. Like, anyway, I like creepy stuff. Okay, so like some of the stuff, even though it was kind of like gross and weird, I was like, that's kind of cool at the same time. So he has this like weird hallucination where he's like seeing her inside his like TV, and he starts like crawling inside the TV screen and stuff, and it's like this big screen of like her lips and like her face, and he's like crawling into the TV. Very strange. So he starts hallucinating all this weird stuff, and like Nikki like talking to him through his TV. I'm sorry, y'all. For some reason, this foundation was starting to look like really yellow on camera, and it is a little bit too yellow for me, but it was the only shade that we had, and it was on sale when I was at work, so I wanted to get it. It's a good foundation. It's slightly too yellow for me, so I'm using like a lighter concealer to see if I can like lighten it up a little bit. So I needed to like pause to like find something to fix this problem real quick. So basically Max then goes back to the homeless shelter after having all those hallucinations. He's very like disturbed, obviously. So he goes back to talk to Brian Oblivion, but he ends up talking to his daughter. So he's kind of talking to her about it, and he basically finds out that Brian Oblivion is actually dead, and he was killed by his own invention. So Videodrome is basically, it causes like malignant brain tumors in people and kind of makes them like go cuckoo, and they start having hallucinations. So Brian had this belief that like hallucinations were like a higher form of being, in like a higher form of reality. So he thought that they were like a good thing. But obviously the hallucinations are bad, not good, because they're very scary from what we can see, Max seeing. So basically what happens is from watching all of this content, he actually gets a brain tumor himself and dies. So her father is actually dead, but he still communicates in like, because we see him earlier on that talk show that I was talking about. I forgot to mention that, but Brian Oblivion was actually on that talk show as well. But all of his responses were just like recorded responses. He made a ton of tapes talking about all these different things. So his daughter like still uses the tapes to kind of make it seem like he's alive and still like participate in events and stuff, but basically makes it seem like he'll only interact with people through like TV or like a video recording. But really it's because he's no longer alive, but that's how he like communicates still even after death. And she kind of like puts his broadcast out there, if that makes sense. A lot of this movie does not make sense, or is not easy to make sense of, so I'm trying to explain it quickly the best that I can. So then Max is still having some very like weird hallucinations, and then he's contacted by this guy. So this guy's name is Barry Convex. So he works for like a glasses company, like spectacle eyewear company. It's actually a front for like an arms company though. So he created this like machine that basically records people's hallucinations and like violent fantasies. So he wants to kind of like record them. So he brings Max into this room and into this like lab looking thing, and he's like, I'm gonna put this thing on your head. And it's a very weird looking machine. I will put a picture of it. So he puts that on his head and he's like, basically just imagine your darkest, most violent fantasies and let yourself hallucinate, and I'm gonna record it. So then after all of this, Max wakes up in bed all like stressed out, breathing heavy, like you think it's kind of just all a dream, like okay, was he just dreaming? You don't really know. And then Masha from earlier, the one business partner that he had who was like this softcore pornographer that he was working with earlier, who was like telling him about the information about Videodrome and stuff, he basically wakes up with her dead body like in his bed and is like, what the heck? And most people would call the police, or at the very least try to do something with the body or be horrified. But instead, this man gets his assistant guy, Harlan, and like calls him up and he's like, come over here. And then Harlan gets over there and he's like, dude, what? It's like early in the morning, like why are you calling me over here? And he's like, I need you to go record this. I need you to go look at this. He wants him to record it because it's like a dead body. I was like, come on, Max, really? Like this man is messed up, okay? And so he goes in there and he's looking around and he's like, what do you want me to record? Like your bed? There's nothing in here. And then Max is like what? Like what are you talking about? So then Max is like, okay, meet me at the studio tomorrow, like, whatever. I don't know what's happening. I guess I'm just tired. Like, and Harlan's just kind of like, okay. So he's like, meet me at the studio later. We're going to see, like, I want to see the new airing of Videodrome. I want to see, like, the next tape. So they go in there, Harlan and Barry Convex from earlier, the other guy who was recording his hallucinations and visions and stuff. They have been working together this whole time. So Harlan has not actually been watching the tapes, because that's basically how you start getting the hallucinations and like the developing the brain tumor. So he's been smart enough to not watch that, because him and Barry have actually been working together. So the whole purpose, you find out, of Videodrome is basically they're purposely trying to get people to develop these tumors because they want to kill off anybody who is sick enough to want to watch that type of content. So they're kind of like, why are you watching it, Max? And he's like, like, so they're kind of like grilling him. They're like, would you want to watch content like that, So that's the whole, like, kind of the whole thing, the whole operation is like basically trying to rid the earth of people who are interested in that type of violent and very graphic content. They're like, let's just get rid of these people and just give them a tumor when they watch this stuff, Honestly, pretty good plan, in my opinion. So basically, just to quickly summarize the ending, I don't want to like spoil it too much. I won't spoil the whole thing, but basically Max goes on to kind of be brainwashed by them to become essentially an assassin. So they get him to kind of just like kill people for them. So he basically becomes like brainwashed into this like human weapon. So you start to kind of not really be able to tell like what are his hallucinations and what's real, which I think is really interesting, but at the same time very confusing. Watching it in the theater, I was like, I don't know what's happening. I had to research it a little bit more later. So I kind of just want to go from here and just kind of talk about my takeaways from the movie and kind of my research on it and like why I really wanted to talk about it. So one of my first things I want to say is I feel like this movie, the message behind it is actually still very relevant today. I know, like, since this movie is kind of old now, it was very heavily centered around TV because TV was kind of like the most popular form of media at the time in the early 80s. So it's definitely centered around that a lot more than like the internet and the kind of things that we have now, like social media and that kind of thing. I feel like is a really kind of bigger and more popular form of media that we use now. But I did want to talk about, so I feel like a really big message of this movie was the, I guess, like exploitation through entertainment and media, especially when it comes to like violence and like sexual content. So all of the people in this movie basically are all kind of a little bit messed up, you know what I mean? They're into some weird stuff like like Nikki, she's like very into like some extreme stuff. Max is like perfectly okay with having this channel where you can go on there and just like watch people getting hurt. And so, he's not a great person either. He's like completely okay with doing that. But at the same time, in his mind, he's like, oh, well, it's giving these people a place to watch this stuff without actually like committing these acts towards other people. So there is kind of that moral dilemma of like, is that okay? Like, is that all right, allowed? And an interesting thing that I found while I was researching this movie is that this came out at a time where a lot of movies were being banned. There were certain films that were just considered so disturbing or like vulgar that they were banned. And the funny thing is I'm pretty sure one of the ones on that list was Chucky. I feel like I saw a picture of like Chucky, or actually, when did Chucky come out? I didn't think Chucky came out in the 80s, did it? Honestly, I have no idea, but I feel like one of the pictures I saw was like a banned movie. It may have been in a different country than the US, I'm not entirely sure, but it was some like newspaper article where it said something about like certain banned movies, and it was the article that was talking about Videodrome and like how it related to that at the time. But one of the pictures of like a newspaper article headline where it was talking about banned movies, I swear to God, there was a picture of Chucky on there. And I was like, out of all the movies you're going to ban freaking Chucky? Like, really? Like, I feel like that's like, I don't know. I just feel like Chucky is so like hard to take seriously. I just do not find that movie disturbing at all. But I don't know. Some people might. I mean, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be showing that to like your young children. But I mean, like, I don't feel like it should be banned. But that's the thing. It's like with that moral dilemma of like, what should be allowed for people to watch, even if it's fake or even if it's just like a horror movie or something like that. Like, where do we draw the line of like what's so vulgar and disturbing or like not okay for us to watch, And it made me think a lot about just like all the things that we can find on the internet nowadays. That's why I feel like it is still really relevant, because the internet is a scary place and there's a lot on there that should not be on there, that is easily accessible to really anybody. So my first point I wanted to make with that, the dark web. The dark web has become like a really well-known thing over the past few years, but it didn't used to be. So the dark web, now a lot of this too is speculation. I have never been on the dark web. I do not wish to. I will not go on there. I don't want to see any of the disturbing stuff that could potentially pop up on there, okay? I don't have any reason to go on the dark web. I am good. Well, it's weird too, because a lot of the stuff that people say is on the dark web that's like really dark and disturbing, a lot of it is fake and it's not real. It's just stuff that people put on there to scare people, or it's just kind of like legend. It's not stuff that's actually on there. Like, from what I know, most of the stuff on the dark web is kind of just like for people to buy illegal goods and like stuff like that. But I'm not an expert on it or anything by any means. But the reason I bring it up is like people talk a lot about things on the dark web, like child exploitation, stuff like that, very disturbing. People talk about those red rooms. Have y'all ever heard of those before? It's almost like what Max had on his channel, except, real, where it's like people will pay to basically watch people be. And now, from what I know, these are not actually real. I think that they're just kind of a legend that people made up about the dark web. From what I know, they're not actually like a real thing. But a lot of people are kind of like, well, you never know. There's a lot of stuff on the dark web. There might be something like that. So, you have stuff like that. There's just a lot of things on the dark web, like, that it's just really, really disturbing. But, it almost does cater to people who want to watch that kind of thing, or like want to watch just really messed up stuff. Like, there is some content like that on there. And then in addition to that, so this is not even on the dark web, which is the worst part. Just in general, on social media and just on the internet, there's a lot of like, especially a few years ago. Now, okay, please, you guys do not think that I am like psychotic for knowing these things. I just want to let you guys know I am not somebody who likes to watch videos like this. I've always just been very interested in the dark side of humanity and true crime and creepy things. I originally went to college to study criminal psychology because it's like so interesting to me. So things that are very dark and disturbing are just naturally very interesting to me. Like, it doesn't mean that I think it's okay. It doesn't mean that it's something that I like to hear about and watch. It does disturb me. I just find it interesting. So I just want to let y'all know, the fact that I know a lot about this stuff, please do not think that I am like some creepo, okay? I happen to know a lot about this stuff because I find it interesting. When I was younger, like I remember, watching a lot of those like YouTube countdowns where it's like, top 10 creepiest websites, top 10 creepiest dark web pages, stuff like that. And I remember like there was a site that was literally called Best Gore, and it was literally actual videos of people being hurt, S word, like all types of like just, like I don't even know how to say this again without being like we're getting into some really dark subjects today, okay guys? Like beheadings, like terrorist stuff like there's just really really disgusting, disturbing videos on sites like that. And that was literally like that site was created specifically for people to go and watch videos like that. And it really made me think of this because like obviously that's on the internet and like I think things are a lot heavily censored now, like more heavily censored on social media and on the internet in general with videos like that, thank God. But you still can find them, I'm sure. I remember even times where there was something going around on Twitter where it was a video of a guy taking his own life by with a gun, and this video was being spread around on Twitter, and people were purposely like tagging each other in it, and like they would mask it as some other video so that people would click on it not knowing what it was, and they would be forced to see something like that. And it's just sick, the things that people do on the internet, the things that you can watch, and the content that is put out there. It's just really disturbing. Like, and this movie made me think about that a lot because I mean that's basically Channel 83 is basically like the 80s TV version of a site like that where you can go on and see terrible things like that obviously no censored program is going to be able to show you or want to show you for that matter, like rightfully so. So it's really interesting because I mean, I think some people would go on there and watch things like that out of like morbid curiosity, just because we're human beings, we naturally have a morbid curiosity when it's something that we've like never seen before or something that's very dark. I think that a lot of people, even just people who are interested in true crime like me and stuff like that, I think we're all a little bit like morbidly curious in some ways, but there were also people who would go on sites like that because they enjoyed watching those types of things and were very sick and like enjoyed that. So it is really disturbing to think that there are people out there who would consume that type of content, like knowing that it's not acting, it's real, and they want to see that type of content. So I don't know, it just made me think a lot about that, like, the stuff that's on the dark web and like some of those sites that existed for a while where they purposely had content like that for people to go watch. And it's sick, but it's like there were people out there watching it enough for it to be a site for quite a while with plenty of people on there commenting and like watching those videos. So it's just really interesting to think about and really disturbing because it's like this is one of the reasons that I feel like this movie is so relevant to now, because there's still a lot of sites and things like that on the internet, So sorry, let me stop talking and like keep doing my makeup, but that was like a really big point for me that I feel like I took away from it, because especially when I was younger, I mean, I think things are a lot more heavily censored now, but I mean, a lot of things that were on like social media and online, like that type of stuff was really spread around and it was not censored at all, and just really disturbing, like that people were okay with posting that kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, we have freedom of speech, we can post what we want, we can access what we want on the internet, but like at what cost? Like, is it okay for us to be able to see those types of things? So it's like a really big debate that I feel like is still kind of a thing. But especially at this time where a lot of things were being censored and like TV was becoming more of a big thing, I feel like this film was like really touched on that a lot. And it's just interesting because that's still like relevant topic to us now, just kind of in a different way, more like social media and the internet. You know what I mean? The next thing I really wanted to talk about was just, honestly, the cinematography in this movie was so freaking cool. It was very gross, very gory, but it was really cool and very unique. And I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. There's this one scene where, like I mentioned, the part with the TV where he's hallucinating the TV, and it has like where he's like hallucinating that the TV has like veins and it's like breathing, and it starts almost looking like human like and like flesh like, but it's like a TV. Like that scene was really like strange and surreal, but like very interesting. Oh, and there's another part basically when he kind of becomes like the assassin. He hallucinates that he has this, he pulls this gun, he pulls it out of this crevice in his stomach. Oh, I'm like gagging even just thinking about it. Literally, I was like, I don't get queasy easily from, I don't know, I just don't get queasy from like gory or like bloody scenes or anything like that. But some of the scenes in this movie, actually, it was more of like that gross out factor than like, oh, this is scary. You know what I mean? And I feel like body horror and stuff like that is really interesting in films because I feel like there's a lot of things, especially people who like horror movies and watch them a lot, like there's a lot of things that aren't really gonna like scare you or freak you out or really give you any sort of like scared or it's just not going to give you like a specific reaction. You're more just kind of like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? But I feel like body horror and stuff like that, it almost forces you to have a reaction. Like even if you're not scared, it forces you to like gag or like go like ugh or like cringe or like be grossed out. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like its own unique genre in a way to me, because I feel like it just gives you a very different like visceral reaction rather than just being like, oh, I'm scared or I'm freaked out. It's more like, ew, gross. Like, it gives you that instinctual, like, grossed out reaction, which I feel like sometimes can almost be like scary in its own way. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I totally forgot to show what palettes I'm using. This is the Venus 2 palette by Lime Crime. I've honestly had this thing forever and I haven't used it in a long time. I've been trying to use my palettes that I haven't been using lately for these looks because I have so freaking many and I end up using the same ones every day. So I need to like branch out and use some other ones. So I'm using that, and then I'm also going to be using my Hot Cheetos palette. This palette is literally so cute. I am obsessed with it. It looks like a Hot Cheetos bag, and look at the colors. I'm going to be using this red one down here, I think. But anyway, where did I leave off? Let me think. So there's also a scene where basically it's kind of again where like his lines of like reality and hallucination are being blurred, and we see this one part with the TV where all these like organs and like bloody organs and bits just come like blasting out of the TV screen, and it's really gross and very like disturbing but very visually interesting. That was the way I felt through most of this movie. I was like, that is disgusting, but that is freaking cool. Like, it was a really cool movie, like visually. And honestly, like I said, like it looks kind of corny to us just because like it's 80s video editing. But honestly, for that time period, like the special and practical effects in that movie were actually really, really interesting and like really ahead of their time. I feel like I don't know, some of the stuff actually looked pretty realistic for the effects that they had back in that time period. Like it was pretty cool. There's another scene, like I said, where he becomes kind of like the assassin for them, where he hallucinates that, like I said, he has that like crevice thing in his stomach, and he like takes the gun out of it, and it has this gross like goo on it and like bodily fluids like dripping from it. Oh my god, it literally made me want to like gag. Like, have you ever seen something? Do you guys have this reaction? Like, do you ever just see something that looks so slimy and gross, and like the texture of it just looks so disgusting that you just want to like gag? Like, I don't know, dude. I just, certain things that look really like slimy and nasty like that, I just like, it literally will make me gag just to look at it. Like, it's so gross. Whatever gelatinous substance was like on his hand, it was literally like dripping from the gun. And it was just really gross, really nasty. And then it's that iconic scene where he's holding the gun and he starts hallucinating that there's all these like wires coming out of the gun and basically like embedding themselves into his skin, and like there's a bunch of blood dripping out and coming out. Like he's basically becoming one with like technology and stuff, which is really interesting because it's kind of like, to me, is a little bit of a metaphor. Someone was saying how it's kind of like a metaphor for how human beings become really like integrated physically and emotionally with technology as they evolve. And that is so true. And that's another reason I feel like this film is really, really relevant to our modern society, because I mean, everybody has a freaking phone in their hand. Everybody, like, I literally could not live without my phone, to be honest with you. Like, I really could not. Like, phone, I love you. I record with my phone, by the way, if you didn't know. So, really couldn't live without my phone, okay? Like, I'm just kidding. I could live without it. I really would not want to. And I feel like all of us, like, I mean, it's so commonplace for us to have at least some type of phone, especially an iPhone or something like that. Like, we are so integrated with technology. I mean, even, for example, like TikTok, right? TikTok wasn't even a thing just a few years ago. Like, it is crazy to me to think that when I was in high school, for the majority of it, TikTok was not even a thing. TikTok is huge, absolutely huge. And I don't think anybody anticipated, like, how big TikTok would become. And now TikTok is literally just, like, a part of life. I feel like the youth is, like, obsessed with TikTok. All the trends that come out of it, all the drama that comes out of TikTok. Like, just everyone uses TikTok. TikTok is, like, probably one of the biggest social medias I've seen in, like, a really long time. Probably since, like, Facebook and all that, like, first came out. You know what I mean? Like, TikTok is huge. So even that is just an example of how like socially integrated we are with technology. And I feel like a lot of the visuals of like the gory stuff of like, the anthropomorphized TV and like all the, the gun being like embedded in his hand, and like the part where they put the CD tape like into the crevice thing in his stomach. Like I just feel like it's almost showing how human beings become so like integrated with technology. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I thought that was a really interesting point. And I feel like once I started to view it from that lens and thinking about all the like gory and like weird like horror scenes with like the technology and stuff, like I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. I kind of see what he was trying to communicate there. You know what I mean? Now I'm gonna keep the eye look kind of simple, but I want it to still be colorful because we're going for like the 80s vibe, obviously. And I know my hair looks whack. Okay, I'm gonna take this out later. Oh yeah, so there's one other scene where basically he kind of goes like assassin mode, and he has that gun like embedded into his hand, and like it's almost like, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like this weird, like, veiny, giant, like, cancerous like mass on his hand where like the gun is attached to. So the gun basically like shoots cancerous tumors at people. It basically shoots cancer into somebody. I know, kind of weird, right? So there's a scene where the Barry Convex guy, he basically finds him at this big like seminar thing that he's doing, and he shoots him with his little like hand embedded gun thing, and it basically like shoots this like cancerous stuff into his body, and his organs and like all of his insides just start like bubbling out and like coming out of his body and like bursting through his chest, and like his face is like broken in half, and like you see his skull, and like all his like brains and intestines are just like bubbling, like gurgling out. Like it's pretty nasty, but it honestly is like very realistic looking for, again, like for an 80s movie. The practical effects in that scene were actually like really good. Like I thought it was really interesting, but it was definitely very gross. Very gross. I just remember like everybody in the audience in the theater was just like, ew. So y'all, honestly, I feel like that's pretty much just like the rest of my review for the movie. Like I said, like I feel like there's really not a whole lot to be said about the plot, just because I feel like it was very like representative. You know what I mean? I feel like, I don't know, it was kind of like abstract, if you will. So it's kind of hard to like explain the plot and give like a definitive like summary of the movie. I kind of just want y'all to go see it. Like I don't want to show too much of it. I don't want to even talk about it too much, because honestly, going into it blind and just kind of watching it and seeing what happens was a very interesting way to watch that movie. And I feel like researching it, I understood a lot more like what it was actually about. But yeah, I feel like it definitely made some very like interesting points about like technology and like just like the nature of humanity and society. We live in a society, basically. I already did my eyeliner, but I kind of want to add like a little bit of this shimmery like black blue glitter color over top of it, because I feel like that would be a vibe. I'm gonna do that off camera though, because I've been talking for way too long. All right, you guys, so that entire eye look that I just did like literally was not filmed at all, so love that for me. Basically all you missed was the rest of my eyeliner and my mascara, but I was talking and it didn't record any of it. I don't know why. I thought my phone was recording. I swear to God, I told y'all it's not a Jordan video unless something goes wrong. I don't know why. Also, I don't have any drinky drink in here. It's just water today because I'd be feeling severely dehydrated today, and I think I might be getting sick, so I'm trying to stay hydrated. No alcohol for me tonight. So I was talking about just all the like crazy stuff that's on the internet and that type of thing, and I was kind of extending off of that. Just how so much on the internet is just uncensored, and it's kind of like, this movie made me think a lot about how, we have very much like freedom of speech on the internet. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's allowed to be on there under the guise of like freedom of speech, and being able to post what we want, being able to, put out there what we want to, talk about what we want to talk about on the internet, and being able to do a lot of it anonymously is like a really big thing too. So I feel like there's that kind of debate of like, freedom of speech is great, but how much is too much when it comes to the internet and like what we're posting and what we're saying and what is like available to look at online. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like a good example of this, and something that I was thinking about a lot after this movie, so as somebody who's very interested in true crime, this is a pretty well-known case, and let me know if any of y'all have heard of this before. I remember hearing about this just because it was so like weird and just out there, and nothing I've ever heard before. So this was basically a case of consensual. So have you ever seen like those chat forums online where people will like talk about anything? And honestly, I feel like it's still kind of like that today. I feel like some of the online chat forum sites aren't as big as they were in like the 90s and early 2000s. But even like sites like Reddit, I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff on Reddit, and like true stories from people, or what people say are true stories, confessions, like things that I'm kind of like, that should have stayed in the drafts. Like, I don't think you should have told that to anybody. There's like some very strange conversations and confessions from people on Reddit that are under like anonymous throwaway accounts. And I think a lot of like forums were like that too. And that's like another thing where you can find some really disturbing stuff online. So in this case, basically, it was an entire chat forum for people who enjoyed the act of, and people who also wanted to be victim to that. I'm going to put the name of the guy who actually like committed the crime, even though it was technically like a consensual act. I mean, there's obviously a lot wrong with both of these people up here, like to want to do something like this, but I just kind of feel uncomfortable including the victim because I feel like since he was the actual victim of the crime, I don't know. I mean, obviously, he did consent to it and he probably had a lot that he was struggling with to want to do something like that. But it's really sad to me, honestly, and I don't want to put like his name. I'd rather just put the name of the guy who actually committed the act because he still knew that that was not okay and he shouldn't have been preying on people like that, even if the guy did consent to it. So it's a very complicated, very strange case. But basically, it was this chat forum where not only were these people where the case actually happened, but tons of people were on there engaging in conversations and fantasies about. And basically what happened is that these two people met up, and this one guy who was into the act of doing that met up with somebody who wanted to, you know, have that committed towards him. And he did actually kill and the guy. So it was this case of like, how does a forum like that even exist? How are there people online actually talking about meeting up and doing this kind of thing? And not only them, but multiple people into this type of stuff, And it's like, oh, well, freedom of speech, they can go on there and talk about it if they want. But it's just so disturbing. It's like, how does something like that even exist, It just blew my mind. I never in a million years would have thought that something like that existed. So that was like something else that got me thinking. It's just like, I don't know, just how crazy it is, like all the stuff that there is online. Going back to like TikTok too, like there's so much crazy stuff on TikTok that, as heavily censored as TikTok claims to be, is a lot of times not censored, There's like people on there who are like predators and stuff. Like, it's just crazy, like, especially with the way social media and stuff like that has progressed. I feel like this movie is even more relevant of, censorship and like what should be allowed through media and what shouldn't. And I think that, social media has like brought even a new, more of a new age for that, and even besides, like the violent content and stuff like that, things that are like violent or sexual or like disturbing or whatever. Like the other day I was watching, shout out to Oompa Bill, he is literally so funny, I love his channel. He was talking about this guy who is basically a Twitch streamer in Japan, and he's a black guy, at least I'm pretty sure, like I don't know his exact race, but he appears to be. And he basically, what he does is, I don't know if he lives in Japan or if he just like makes videos there, but he's like a live like I think Twitch or like Kick streamer, and basically his entire thing is just doing like outrageous things that are like really disrespectful to the people in Japan. And anytime somebody calls him out for being rude, he just calls them racist.
Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Why you do this? Pearl Harbor? Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. You know why we do to you? Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We destroy it because you don't know how to behave. Wallahi billahi wa ta'ala. I swear to God.
And like he's done all kinds of stuff. He just has done all kinds of like inappropriate things basically for views and just getting himself in trouble and like doing dumb stuff. His name is Johnny Somali. Look him up. I watched this video on him where he just did a bunch of stuff where he was just being really obnoxious and really disrespectful to the people of Japan, like as a foreigner in Japan, which is, from what I know, a big culture of like Japan is just, people very much like stick to themselves. They're very like respectful of other people. So it just made it like 10 times more disrespectful that he was acting like that as like a foreigner in their country. Like usually you have respect for other people when you go to a different country that is like not your home country. But basically like, he was doing that for views, and he was doing that for people's entertainment. Basically not only the exploitation of the people that like he was, bothering, but like exploitation of himself doing stupid shit, you know what I mean? And he's not the only one either. I've seen other people before who, it might not be in a different country, but just like people in general just, doing terrible like prank videos and like, reaction video, like just stuff that is just very like exploitative of like people's reactions or like disturbing the peace, and it's all for views. And it's just like this, I don't know, this movie just made me think about that a lot. It's obviously very different now with social media and everything, but I mean, the reason he even had that channel in the movie was because he wanted to profit off of it. Like he wanted to profit off of like, oh, look at this stuff that's so taboo and like, and sickening and wild, and like you can't see this anywhere else, and I feel like people are really still like that in a lot of ways. Like they will just do anything for like views or for money or for clout. I literally, you guys, this is just a side note, but I literally freaking hate the word clout so much. It makes me want to die. It's just so stupid. Like, oh, clout. I want to get clout. Like, can we just Can we just like delete that word out of our vocabulary? But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it just made me think a lot about how that type of thing has progressed and how some people really will exploit anything for content. Or like that family channel mom who recently got exposed. Like, sorry, I'm going off on a long tangent now about all the terrible people on the internet, but she recently got exposed for like malnourishing her kids and like basically like, child neglect and child abuse. And people were, trying to get them reported because the stuff that they would post on these channels, I mean, it was evident that she was like not treating her kids well, and it was all, she was just exploiting them for views, forcing them to be on this family channel when they don't even get a say. And it's just, I don't know. It just made me think a lot about how like media, I just feel like whatever media is really popular at the time, people will try to, there are always going to be the people that try to do bad things and exploit people or exploit, things that are not good to try and get views and to try and get attention. And that's just how it is, unfortunately, whether it's TV, social media, whatever media is popular at the time. That's just, there's always going to be people like that. So y'all know I usually like to give the movie like a rating out of 10. For this one, I would probably give it, I don't know, maybe like a 7, just because I did definitely have a hard time like kind of understanding what was going on. I wish it was like explained a little bit better. It was kind of explained a little bit, so it wasn't too hard to understand, but I do definitely think that this movie was a lot more heavily centered on like the meaning behind it and the visuals rather than just like a solid plot. And I think the whole point was to kind of feel like you're hallucinating along with Max, so like you don't really know what's real and what isn't anymore as he's kind of descending into madness and that tumor is kind of like taking over his brain. So I feel like that kind of does make sense why it was made like that. So I'm not like criticizing it for that reason. I just feel like it was a little hard for me to get into it personally, just kind of going and seeing it from like, without really knowing anything about the movie beforehand. It just made it a little bit hard to follow, but I definitely don't think that it made it a bad movie or anything like that. I really thought it was interesting, and the more that I like researched it and the meaning behind it, I honestly did think it was really, really relevant to today. So it was very interesting for sure. Okay, y'all, which earrings should I wear? I cannot decide. I have these red lightning bolts. I love how I'm asking y'all like you can actually respond to me like through the through the camera. I'm kind of feeling the hoops for some reason. I feel like it's just maybe a little too much red. Y'all, speaking of which, I feel like I have a different hair color in literally every video I've made so far. Now I'm blonde. I've been wanting to go back to like blonde or like a kind of more natural color for a while now. I just feel like, I don't know, I really liked having the colored hair, but it really bothered me that, especially being pink, I felt like every single time that I wanted to wear red, I just looked like a clown. Like I was like, it's giving Valentine's Day. Like it's just, it clashed. It did not, it was not the vibe. I'm usually not one of those people that's like, oh, certain colors don't go together, but I just do not really like pink and red together that much unless it's like Valentine's Day fit or something. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just felt like it would clash every time I wanted to wear red. And I'm just glad that I can kind of wear whatever again without having to like match it to my hair. Honestly, I cannot see what I'm doing right now, so I hope that I'm not completely messing this up. Oh, another thing that I wanted to talk about with this movie. So I feel like another theme that was discussed a lot was how, as human beings, like especially with technology, we're constantly like just in search of like more gratification and like more stimulation. And I think that's even more true now. Like they discussed that theme a little bit throughout this movie, but like that is so true when it comes to now. Like I feel like I mean, you see people who are like obsessed with like, social media, like likes and views, where like social media is like their whole life. You know what I mean? And not in a like, oh, I like social media way, but in a like unhealthy way. And I just feel like that's like a really good example of that is like people just searching for that like constant stimulation, or like people who constantly like have to have their phone out like recording everything. Like I don't know, like social media and stuff like that, it just really gives us that like instant gratification, and I feel like it kind of makes it so that yeah, like it's we just constantly feel the need to be like stimulated by something. You know what I mean? And I'm even like guilty of that. Like I feel the same way sometimes, like I literally always joke, I'm like, dude, I'm literally like a Cocomelon kid. Like when I'm in the shower, I'm watching a YouTube video. When I'm like cooking, sometimes I'm watching a YouTube video. Trying to go to sleep, I'm watching a YouTube video or something. Sometimes I can't even just like do a daily task without having some sort of like video going on in the background or something. So yeah, I feel like that was also like another point that the film made. But overall, I really liked it. I found it really interesting. It definitely made me want to watch a lot more of like David Cronenberg stuff because I don't know, I found like the film style of it really interesting. And I have heard that he has some other good movies, so I definitely will be checking that out. Alrighty, you guys, and we're gonna finish this off with a red gloss to really give it that like shiny look, and it's on my teeth. Love that. Wow, that is a very pretty lip combo. I am obsessed with that. All right, and let's take off the little headband here. It's definitely giving very 80s, and I feel like it fits like the color scheme and everything. I actually like really love 80s makeup. It's like one of my most favorite like decades of makeup to do. I just feel like it's so fun. Like I love like the vibrant colors and like the creativity. I just think it's such a fun era of makeup. So I was really excited to do like another 80s look. But yeah, overall, this movie was very interesting. It gave me a lot to think about. For those of you who don't know, in college, like I studied mass media and communications, and then I was a minor in psychology. So even though I didn't end up actually going to like the psychology and like criminal justice field, I still just find it really interesting the way that media affects us psychologically. Like I feel like those two things really coincide a lot. So it's always just been something fascinating to me. I don't know, it's just interesting how this is such an old movie now, but it still has like really relevant message. So that was really what I took away from it the most. And it was really cool like seeing it in like a old theater like that too. I really want to go back there. It was super cool. All right, you guys, this is the finished look. I am serving hard in these videos, no offense. Okay, like, look at me. Oh my gosh. Also, I was trying to go for the vibe of like if I was a character in this movie, and I feel like I kind of nailed it. So yeah, well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed my review. You should definitely go watch this movie, like I said, unless you're queasy, you might not want to watch it, but I don't know. It's some of y'all might think the special effects are kind of corny and they might not freak you out too much. But if you're somebody who like gets queasy easily, you might want to fast forward through those scenes, you know? Well, anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, morning, etc. And I will see you next time. Bye.